1. Operation Sea Spray, the day they sprayed a city. In 1950, San Francisco became an unwitting test site for biological warfare. The U.S. Navy secretly sprayed the entire city with Serratia marcescens, a supposedly harmless bacteria, to study how germs might spread in a real attack. For 6 days, a naval vessel off the coast pumped millions of bacterial particles into the fog. Soon, residents began falling ill, strange infections spreading in hospitals that doctors couldn't explain. One man died. The government denied everything for years, until classified documents surfaced in the 1970s proving the experiment was real. Even worse, it wasn't the only one. Dozens of U.S. cities were later subjected to similar simulations. What began as a harmless test may have unleashed deadly pathogens into the population. To this day, survivors and their families never received answers or apologies. Operation Sea Spray remains one of America's most chilling examples of when national security crossed the line into human experimentation. 2. The vanishing of the USS Cyclops, March 1918. The USS Cyclops, the U.S. Navy's largest ship at the time, vanished somewhere between Barbados and Baltimore. Over 300 sailors disappeared without a trace. No SOS, no wreckage, nothing. The ship's route cut directly through what would later be called the Bermuda Triangle, but this wasn't some tabloid mystery. It was an official Navy vessel, gone in peacetime, during World War I. Rumors spread that the ship had been sabotaged by German agents, or that its mysterious cargo, thousands of tons of manganese ore, somehow destabilized the hull. Others whispered about mutiny or supernatural forces. The Navy launched the largest search in its history and found nothing. The Cyclops captain, George Worley, was known for erratic behavior and reportedly favored Germany. Was he a traitor? A victim? No one knows. The disappearance remains the Navy's single greatest non-combat loss of life, a ghost ship swallowed by history itself. 3. The Great Molasses. Flood, January 15, 1919. Boston's North End smelled sweet that morning, until the ground began to tremble. A massive storage tank holding over 2 million gallons of molasses burst, unleashing a wave 25 feet high, moving 35 miles per hour through the streets. It flattened buildings, ripped apart steel supports, and drowned everything in its path. People and horses were trapped in sticky waves so thick rescuers couldn't pull them out. 21 people died, 150 were injured, and for decades afterward, the neighborhood reeked of sugar. The company that owned the tank blamed anarchists for sabotage, a convenient excuse during the Red Scare. But engineers later proved the truth. The tank had been cheaply built, ignored leaks, and inspectors were bribed to stay quiet. The Great Molasses Flood wasn't an accident. It was corporate negligence wrapped in syrup. Even now, locals swear that on hot summer days, the streets still smell faintly of molasses and death. 4. Project Blue Book's Forgotten Files. From 1952 to 1969, the U.S. Air Force investigated over 12,000 UFO reports. They called it Project Blue Book, a mission to debunk unidentified flying objects during the height of Cold War paranoia. Publicly, the Air Force claimed to find explanations for almost every case: weather balloons, meteors, experimental aircraft. But 701 incidents were left officially unidentified. Some came from military pilots who swore they saw objects defying physics. One report describes a glowing disk over an Air Force base moving faster than any jet on record. Another involved radar readings matching pilot sightings hundreds of miles apart. When Blue Book was shut down, the official statement said, "UFOs pose no threat to national security." But behind closed doors, reports continued, under new names and higher classifications. Today, the files remain some of the most sought-after documents in the National Archives. Were they studying aliens or their own advanced tech? Maybe both. 5. Project Cirrus, the day we created a hurricane. In 1947, scientists from General Electric teamed up with the U.S. military to attempt the impossible: control the weather. They launched Project Cirrus, a secret experiment to weaken hurricanes using dry ice and silver iodide. On October 13th, they flew into a tropical storm off the coast of Florida and released the chemicals directly into the clouds. The storm changed direction and roared toward Savannah, Georgia. Dozens died, homes were destroyed, and the team was blamed for steering a hurricane into land. GE shut down the project immediately, and all reports were buried. But it wasn't over. Decades later, similar experiments resurfaced under new names: Storm Fury, Popeye, Cloverleaf. Each aimed to weaponize nature itself. The idea that we could bend the sky to our will was intoxicating until it became terrifying. Because when you try to control nature, it tends to fight back. 6. The Radium Girls. In the roaring 1920s, hundreds of young women found jobs painting watch dials with glowing paint made from radium, the new miracle element. Their bosses told them it was safe, even encouraged them to lick their brushes for a finer point. The women painted their nails, teeth, even faces for fun. But years later, their bodies began to rot from the inside. Their jaws dissolved, bones shattered, and tumors grew that glowed faintly in the dark. Doctors were paid to call it mysterious anemia. The companies denied everything, but a group of 5 women fought back, the Radium Girls. They sued, forcing the courts to acknowledge corporate guilt for the first time in industrial history. Their case birthed America's labor safety laws, and their suffering saved millions who came after. Still, their graves remain faintly radioactive to this day, a tragic glow that reminds us progress always has a price. 7. Operation Paperclip. When World War II ended, America raced not just for victory, but for mines. Under Operation Paperclip, the U.S. secretly smuggled over 1,600 Nazi scientists into the country. Among them were engineers who built V-2 rockets and doctors who'd conducted horrific experiments in concentration camps. Their Nazi records were erased, their names changed, and they were hired by agencies like NASA and the Department of Defense. One, Wernher von Braun, became a hero of the space race, the man who helped send humans to the moon. But his past was drenched in the ashes of war. The same hands that built rockets for Hitler built them for America. For decades, the truth was buried behind patriotic speeches and scientific triumphs. Operation Paperclip proved a chilling point. In the pursuit of power, morality is negotiable, and sometimes victory doesn't just cost lives, it costs your soul. 8. The WOW signal, the message from the stars. On August 15, 1977, astronomer Jerry Ayman was scanning deep space with a radio telescope in Ohio when his computer printed out a strange sequence. 6 EQJ5. The signal was powerful, clean, and precise, something nature couldn't make. It lasted 72 seconds and came from a region near the constellation Sagittarius. Ayman circled the printout in red and wrote one word beside it: wow. Scientists tried for decades to find it again. Nothing. Some thought it was alien contact. Others said it was a satellite, a comet, or something stranger still. NASA never explained it, and no source has ever repeated the pattern. The WOW signal remains one of the greatest mysteries in astronomy. Proof that something out there once called to us, if only for a moment. Maybe it was an accident. Or maybe we weren't meant to hear it twice. 9. Flight 19. The Bermuda Triangle. Mystery, December 5th, 1945. 5 Navy Avenger bombers took off from Florida on a routine training flight. The weather was clear. But a few hours later, radio chatter grew frantic. Everything looks strange. The ocean doesn't look right. The pilot sounded lost. Instruments spinning, compasses failing. Then silence. A rescue plane sent after them vanished too, with 13 more men on board. The Navy's search covered 250,000 square miles and found nothing. No debris, no oil slicks, no bodies. The final report read, "They disappeared as if they had flown to Mars." The incident birthed the modern myth of the Bermuda Triangle, but declassified records show something more sinister. Magnetic anomalies, secret test flights, and radar interference from military experiments in the area. Whether human error or something else, Flight 19 became a ghost story written in the sky, one that still haunts pilots today. 10. The Great New Madrid Earthquakes. In 1811 and 1812, America shook, literally. A series of quakes struck the Mississippi River Valley so violently that it made the river flow backward. Entire forests sank, new lakes formed overnight, and the earth split open for miles. The tremors were felt 1,000 miles away, ringing church bells in Boston. This wasn't California. It was the Midwest, far from any fault line. Scientists still don't fully understand why it happened. Native American legends spoke of the ground rolling like waves, and settlers described the sound as thunder beneath your feet. Some said it was punishment for man's arrogance. What's terrifying is that the same fault line still exists, and geologists say it could awaken again. If it does, cities like Memphis and St. Louis could be leveled. The New Madrid earthquakes remind us that nature, not man, decides how long civilization stands.